Okay, today we're going to take a look at some different cradles and mounts for the M2 50 caliber machine gun. I felt it kind of important to do this because there's so many different options out there as to what to use. The reason being is this gun's been around for over 100 years, and while the gun itself has stayed the same design-wise for the most part, the way that it's mounted and shot has evolved and changed. It's important to familiarize yourself with these just because this isn't like an M16 or even some of the medium belt feds. This is a crew-served weapon now. So it's kind of like a complete weapon system, so to speak, involving multiple different parts. And in my opinion, the cradles and the mounts are a very crucial and important part of this gun. So we're going to take a look at some of those cradles now. The first thing we have here is an M3 tripod. The M3 tripod is designed specifically for the M2hb. It's a much larger version of the M2 tripod. We'll show you here. Just to give you an idea of size comparison. Both of them use a small PINTLE socket, but again, this is a much larger, heavier unit. And the reason being is the 50 caliber is just such a large machine gun, and it packs a lot of punch, has a lot of recoil on it. Mounted on here, we just have a 50 caliber T&E mechanism. These are different from 30 caliber or M60 T&Es. Okay, so the first cradle we're going to talk about, our mount, is a small PINTLE mount. This is the cheapest mount you can get to use your 50 cal. They run about $100 or so. And when we say small PINTLE mount, this would be the PINTLE portion of it. And to give you an idea, this is a large PINTLE. So when you hear the word large PINTLE, they're referring to this. When they hear small PINTLE, they're referring to this. And it's important to know that as well, because just like we talked about this tripod, this has a small PINTLE socket on it. So that just drops in and it locks. Other mounts, some that we're going to go over, like the M25 pedestal, have a large PINTLE socket on it. So if you wanted to use this mount in a large PINTLE socket, you would need this adapter. And basically, this just allows you to put small PINTLE in the adapter, and then that will go in the large socket. The way this small PINTLE attaches to our gun is on the bottom here of the trunnion we have a hole. You can see that this hole is also on the other side. It goes through both right and left side plate as well as the trunnion. Our PINTLE mount has a cross pin. Pin comes out. This goes on. Just want to trying to get the camera there. Line it up. And then we just have a castle nut that goes on the other side. And that's it. Some people will just never even take this thing off. Alright, the way that this mounts in the tripod is pretty self-explanatory. We'll go over it anyway. These levers are locks. They lock your legs in place. The back legs extend out. The front leg does extend forward. And there's locks also on the back. So this portion of the tripod, this is our PINTLE lock. It's just a switch. When it's down here, it locks that small PINTLE into it so it can't come out. So we want to have that open. drop her pintle in, lock it, and she's in place and ready to go. And there is a hole in the back of the receiver, see if you can get it here, that the T&E pin goes through so it can be locked into place. And that's it for the small pintle socket. Okay, the next mount or cradle we're going to go over here is the M23 50 caliber cradle. This is an M25 pedestal that you're looking at right here. This would have been bolted in the back of a half track. It has a large pintle socket on it. So as we spoke, the M3, M2, they have a small pintle socket. These have a large pintle socket because, again, this M23 mount utilizes that large pintle that we spoke about. So we'll just drop this in here. And then once in, there's a lever on the other side here to tighten down and hold this in place. We have 2 pins on here. Make sure the camera's getting it. Again, this just drops in here like this. You can see it's a very nice precision fit in the large pintle socket. There's 2 pins on this mount here. Actually, there's 3. You have your front pin here, which again goes through the trunnion of the 50, and then you have your rear pin, which will go through the rear of it. This is in a fixed position right now, so the gun can't elevate. If you remove this center pin, which we won't pull out, it'll allow the gun to elevate, but right now it can only traverse. When we go to this other side here, this plate that you're looking at here, make sure the camera's getting in. This plate is for hooking an ammo tray on. I don't have one here. It slides in, it has a seat that comes out, and it holds a 100-round can of 50 caliber ammo, and that has like an arm with some springs on it that comes up and holds it in place. Alright. So to mount our gun in this cradle, all we need to do is seat it and mount. Make sure our pins are lined up here. Sometimes it takes a little work to get them in. It's supposed to be a very tight precision fit. And we're locked in there. I'll raise the camera a bit for you here. And we're locked into place. If you're going to shoot from a setup like this, it's nice to shoot from the standing position, but you have to make sure that you have this pedestal bolted down to something very solid. Bed of a truck, something like that. So we'll spin this around here, and you can see this tray perfectly lines up with the feed end of the gun. And these are very nice heavy-duty mounts here, but they're rigid, so there's really all the recoil is getting absorbed by whatever base that this is on. Oh, okay. So we'll go over here. We removed this pin here, and again, this is our pin that's basically like a travel lock here. And you can see the gun can it can actually elevate. Alright, next up on the list here is probably my favorite and the most modern mount. It's the Mark 93 soft mount. Take a look at it here real quick before we put it in the cradle. As we can see, this utilizes a small pintle, so it can go directly into a M3 tripod, and that's what we'll do here. Let's make sure the camera's good here. Move this in a little bit. Alright, now this is just a really impressive mount here. It has buffers built into it, hydraulic buffers, and that's what really makes this mount impressive here. So the gun bolts in up front, and then these take all the recoil out of the gun. So it's a much smoother shooting platform, because as you're actually shooting, the gun is moving back and forth in here. Let's go to the other side. Again, what makes this mount such a great mount is the diversity of it as well. We have this plate here, and this is for attaching our ammo load. So the first one to look at here is just a 100 round can. And then these studs here hook right into the side of the mount, and then down it goes. This lid then pops off, and then it opens. You can just throw a can in there. This is just empty grass from the chute. And then once the can's in, it locks it in place. Very nice for vehicles traveling, you know, bumpy roads out there. Obviously, that we're patrolling on overseas, that was kept in mind for this. They also have a 250 round can. This holds 250 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition. We can see the same design as far as how it goes on. And locks in the exact same way. Same system as far as how this opens up and comes out. And this is just a huge ammo can. No dividers or anything in there. Holes cut out on the bottom to reduce a little weight. This is black because this is what the Navy uses. It's stainless steel. Alright, the way that this mounts in place is there's 3 pins on the side here. This is your pin that goes through your trunnion. This is a locking pin that keeps the elevation fixed. And then we have our rear pin. Again, we just line our holes up. And then we just work those pins in there, and we're locked in place. Just to give you an idea of how this works, if you pull back on the gun here, you can see how it's moving in the carriage. And those shock absorbers in there are just incredibly impressive. It takes all the recoil out. Very comfortable to shoot from. Getting a workout here from moving this gun around. The last one we're going to go over here is the Mark 26 soft mount. This is a Navy mount. This was used by the Navy, and it still is on some ships, and but the Coast Guard is primarily using this now. It was replaced by the Mark 93. Just to give you an idea what this is sitting on, this is a Mark 16 Mod 9 pedestal mount. This would be what you'd see mounted to the decks of these ships, and I have a custom fabricated base for it so that we can shoot 50 caliber from it. One thing you'll notice about this mount is the safeties up top here, and the sight and the back plate is actually built into the mount. So you have a trigger on this side, and you also have a trigger on this side. This holds a 100-round ammo load here, as can be seen. This can holder is held on by these bolts. You can actually take that off there and mount it onto the other side here if you want, if you're running a right-hand feed setup. Just to get a look here, this has some older style shock absorbers built into it there, but they do the job. And this is a very nice heavy-duty mount. Let's see if we can get the... Still has a tag on it. It's always a bonus when you have the original buck tag on there. Now, how do we put the gun in here? Well, because you know, the trigger is actually part of the mount here, you have to have a special back plate on your gun, which we're going to go over. But when we remove this rear pin here, our whole trigger assembly slides down. And if we take a look in here, we can see how this actually works. When we pull our trigger, there's a little nylon roller in there, and that's what works our gun. So we'll remove our front pin here, which again by now you should know goes through the front hole of our 50 caliber. Just like before, we just want to line that hole up. So let's take a look here. This is our back plate. There's no spade grips on it. The only thing we have here is this, I call it a trigger bar. It's specifically for this mount. That's the only purpose for this specific one. Now, once we have that in place here, our spades fold up. Back in place they go. And we're all ready to go here. Gun racks to the rear. If you listen, you can hear that was a firing pin going home. So everything is actuated by the mount itself. Again, really impressive piece of hardware here. There's not a lot of them out there, and especially in civilian hands. It's a huge piece of equipment. That's the Mark 26 soft mount. And that pretty much wraps it up. There is some other mounts out there, some older stuff as well, but that's what I have here, and it's just to give you basically an idea of the diversity of this gun and the different ways that it can be shot. It's very enjoyable to shoot from the standing. No one likes to get down in the dirt behind a tripod.